Now we're going to discuss emotional development. Emotional development is crucial because emotions have a functional and adaptive value in our lives. For example, they guide our behavior. They help facilitate relationships. So let's start by talking about different types of emotions and their purpose. Let's start by talking about differentiating between basic emotions versus complex emotions. So basic emotions include emotions like happiness, interest, surprise, fear, anger, sadness, disgust. If you've seen the movie Inside Out, that movie is about some basic emotions. So these basic emotions are universal in humans and other primates, and we see that these emotions promote survival. So emotions play really powerful roles in the organization of social relationships, the exploration of the environment, and the discovery of self. Of these basic emotions, happiness, anger, sadness, and fear have received the most research attention. So let's start with happiness. Why is happiness important? Well, happiness binds parents and a baby into a warm, supportive relationship that fosters the infant's development. The social smile first appears around 6 to 10 weeks, and we see that it becomes a deliberate social signal between 8 and 10 months. So the social smile, you guys, it's probably the most rewarding thing after you've just had a baby, when they finally give you some positive reinforcement and smile back at you around 6 weeks. Those of you who've had babies, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. It's just so exciting when they smile back at you. So it's exciting, right? Because it is like positive reinforcement. You're getting engaged with your baby. We see that laughter tends to appear around 3 to 4 months in response to very active stimuli. And that's always super fun too, listening to babies laugh. So let's move on to anger and sadness. Why are these emotions important? Well, newborns respond to pleasant experiences like hunger, newborns respond to unpleasant experiences like hunger, typically with generalized distress. So as infants then become capable of more intentional behavior, they want to control their own actions, and they're more persistent about obtaining desired objects. So as a result, these angry reactions then can start to increase. So the expressions of sadness are typically common when infant caregiver communication has been disrupted. So anger would happen then when they're not able to get what they want. So this reflects an increasing understanding of their goals. Fear is important because fear, like anger, typically rises from the second half of the first year, so into the second year. So the most frequent expression of fear is going to be stranger anxiety in response to unfamiliar adults. So this rise in fear after age about 6 months it's good because it keeps newly mobile babies' enthusiasm for exploration in check. I mean, if babies aren't afraid to leave mom or leave dad, right, then they just might keep crawling forever away from you. So it's good that they have some sense of fear because they'll want to come back to their secure base. So complex emotions here are next. Complex emotions are going to emerge later in life, between 18 and 24 months of age. So complex emotions include emotions like guilt, embarrassment, pride. They're emotions that involve a self-evaluative component. So they require an understanding of self. We already discussed the development of self-awareness. Remember the mirror task? So children don't usually start passing the mirror task until around 16 months old. That's when they really understand that they're their own person. So that's 16 months. And then complex emotions start to emerge between 18 and 24 months. So shortly after that, these more complex, more self-conscious emotions, they're also adaptive because they help that child gain this sense of independence. They can be proud of the work that they've accomplished. They can feel shame if they've done something naughty. So these are also important in terms of emotional development. So emotional development doesn't just involve experiencing emotions, but it also involves recognizing emotions. So as early as 4 months, and definitely by 6 months, infants begin to distinguish facial expressions associated with different emotions. And really the best evidence that we have to tell whether infants understand the emotions expressed in a face is that infants often match their own emotions to other people's emotions. So infants will use social referencing, where they look at a caregiver for cues on how to interpret their situation, and they'll use that social referencing to then direct their behavior. So this is used by caregivers to teach children how to react to everyday events. So if something is yucky, like the caregiver might say, yuck, yuck, don't show disgust. They'll be showing disgust to teach that baby, don't put that in your mouth. That's yucky. This is also, though, the reason why when toddlers fall, for example, when they're starting to learn to walk, it's important to try to not totally freak out, because if they see you freak out about their fall, then they'll match their emotion to that. So infants' emotional expressions, they're closely tied to their ability to interpret emotional cues of others. So toddlers are going to use others' emotional messages to evaluate the safety of their surroundings, to guide their own actions, to gather information about other people's intentions and other people's preferences. So what can we do to help foster emotional understanding? Well, one of the things that we can do to help foster emotional understanding is help children just continue to recognize and label their own emotions. So factors that contribute to children's understanding of emotions include parents and children frequently discussing past emotions, especially negative emotions like fear or anger. Do you guys remember when we talked about maternal reminiscing and autobiographical memory? Well, one of the things that's come out of research is that when moms engage in maternal reminiscing about negative events, that this is really, really good for the child's emotional development. So it's sometimes you might think, oh, it's not good to talk about negative things that have happened in the past because you don't want your child to dwell on it. But talking about it can help them process it. So this is really good. This is also something I think that Mr. Rogers did really, really well in his TV show. Parents can also explain how feelings differ and how different situations might elicit different feelings. So just talking through feelings, when do you feel sad? When do you feel angry? That can be so helpful. And then finally, having positive and rewarding relationships with parents and siblings can also help foster emotional understanding. So one of the biggest things is to just talk about feelings, talk about emotions, label emotions. When a toddler is really frustrated and having a temper tantrum, say, it seems like you're frustrated, and what does that frustration feel like? There's some really good books out there that help foster this emotional understanding. One of them is called The Color Monster. So in this book, there's a color monster and he has his feelings all mixed up. They're different colors, and the goal is to put them in their proper jars. So like anger is red. And so you talk about, well, when do you feel angry and what does anger feel like? Another really good book is called In My Heart. So I have a little snippet to read to you guys from that book. I think it's really helpful because it just kind of talks about when do you feel certain emotions and what do they feel like. So this is the type of thing that's really good for children to hear from their parents. Sometimes my heart feels like a big yellow star, shiny and bright. I smile from ear to ear and twirl around so fast. I feel as if I could take off into the sky. This is when my heart is happy. So this book goes on to discuss happiness, sadness, bravery, anger, shyness, all these different feelings. And so this is a really good book that explores a whole range of emotions and that describe how they physically feel. So that's really beneficial to a child. So having really good emotional understanding and being able to recognize emotions is critical then in being able to regulate emotions. So emotional self-regulation refers to the strategies we use to adjust our emotional state to a comfortable level of intensity so we can accomplish our goals. Emotional self-regulation requires voluntary, effortful management of emotions. So this capacity improves gradually, and part of this, there's neural underpinnings here. So as a result of the development of the prefrontal cortex, as well as assistance from caregivers, children can help develop these self-regulation strategies. But emotional regulation actually begins as early as 4 to 6 months of age with very simple strategies. So one example is if a child sees something frightening, they're going to look away from it. And that's an example of emotional regulation. Around 24 months, then you can see that children get better at regulating emotions. And this is particularly because of assistance from adults. Not all children regulate their emotions well, and those who don't tend to have problems interacting with peers and they have adjustment problems. So it's really important for parents and caregivers to just continue to try to develop that emotional understanding and emotional awareness. We see that infants whose parents read and respond sympathetically to the emotional cues of their child tend to be less fussy, tend to be less fearful. They tend to express more pleasurable emotions. They're more interested in exploration. They're also easier to soothe. And then caregivers can also provide lessons in socially approved ways of expressing feelings. So toward the end of the second year, toddlers rapidly develop a vocabulary for talking about feelings. They're not really good yet at using language to manage emotions. So giving them more physical tasks like, I see that you're really angry. Let's throw this balloon down on the ground. That's something that has worked really well with Lenny in the past. So giving them kind of outlets like maybe, I see you're really frustrated. Let's try to get the frustration out by pushing against the wall. So letting them do things can help them manage their emotions better.